As a Gen Xer, we are starting to become of age, where we can afford to travel around the world, where all those destinations that we've always wanted to go to. But some of us have never really traveled. I know it wasn't until I was in my early 40s that I started to actually explore and see the world. And I was always afraid because of everything I saw on television or heard from other people about how dangerous certain locations in the world were, and that I should just stay in the United States and enjoy it here. But after some time and going to other countries, I learned the difference. And today, I'm going to talk to you about getting over your fear of traveling as a Gen Xer that has never traveled before. Let's talk about it. But before we do, make sure to like, share, and subscribe and follow along to the channel and click that notification bell so you never miss another Cling Connection episode. So growing up, I always took family vacations with my mom and dad and my brother and sisters to just various places in the United States. My parents weren't really rich, so a good weekend for us might have been to the New Jersey shore, or a long trip might have been like Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, or maybe even North Carolina. But as I got older, I wanted to explore more and more of the world and spend time outside of the country. However, growing up, as most Gen X know, we grew up in a time where we were told that certain European countries weren't safe because there was communism there. But we had a lot of movies that were out that we used to watch that made us scared to go to other locations. So I didn't really try to venture too much outside of the United States. But then one day I just got my dander up and I said, let's give this a shot. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Most people travel around the world and come back unscathed. Some of them have bad stories they tell, but at the end of the day, most people have a good time. So one of the biggest fears I had to get over was this notion that the rest of the world wasn't safe. I had to turn off those crazy movies that would tell me if I went to certain parts of the country or certain parts of the world, I would get captured and mutilated and used as a test experiment for some sick people out of the Russian government, Russian country, or maybe held as hostage in Southeast Asia. It was crazy. So I had to turn that stuff off and kind of focus in more on what the culture and what the countries were really about. So the first thing I'm going to tell you to do is stop watching movies. They are for entertainment. It's not the real world. Sure, there's some places like North Korea, you'll never see me go there. But there's other countries that I was always so scared of that now I'm going to try. My second suggestion is this. As a Gen Xer, sometimes we get comfortable. We're used to going to work and coming home to our nice house with hot water and electricity and television. We don't want to give that up, but let's try something unusual. Let's get out of our comfort zone. Some places, let's face it, may not have as many modern luxuries as we have here, but a lot of those luxuries are also stress benefactors. You go to a lot of these countries, especially in the Caribbean, these people are really, really happy because they don't have as much stressor as we do. Yeah, they're kind of poorer countries and they don't make a lot of money, but the people are really family oriented and they really care about their fellow man. And it's kind of like that old saying, they used to say, well, how did Abraham Lincoln live without air conditioning? Because he lived without air conditioning because he never knew it existed. It's kind of the same in the Caribbean. The people that are living there or other parts of the world that haven't experienced the type of life that we have in the United States, they're happy. They're not used to living this fast-paced, crazy life. So if you want to step out of your comfort zone, do it, because you're not going to get kidnapped, you're not going to get beat up, and you're not going to get robbed. Most people never experience those things. The next thing as a Gen X traveler I would suggest is that you take the time and plan your trip accordingly. I know that there's places that you've probably always wanted to go to, but either used money as an excuse, work as an excuse, kids as an excuse, or time as an excuse. And as we get older, we realize as our kids get grown and we become more established in our career that we have a little bit more free time. Get your wife, get your girlfriend, get your husband, your significant other, and jump on a plane, but make a list of the places you want to go. I started off with the Caribbean, something easy like a cruise ship, just to experience it. Now, I'm not a big cruiser, but I did get to experience other ports of call and places that I would definitely go back to, and other places I really had no interest to. But I had to get out of my comfort zone to do that. And then I started going to other countries around the world to experience the lifestyle that they had that was a little bit different. Remember, vacation is to learn something new and to relax your mind. It's not to be stressed out. If you're going to be stressed out, you might as well just stay home, drink beer, and watch football. Now, if you're somebody like me, London was always a dream. I always wanted to go to London, especially at Christmas time. I used to see the lights and the different decorations and the festivals they had. Places like Harrods, the big department store, would decorate to the hilt for Christmas. I mean, I had been to New York, I had been to Philadelphia. I had been to Washington, D.C. all at Christmas time, but I'd never experienced a European city, and it's a little bit different there than it is everywhere else in the world. Germany is also known for great Christmas events, and so is France. So if you're thinking about going someplace during the holiday season, make sure it kind of coincides with what your experience is going to be and what you want it to be. When I went to London, I was mesmerized. We walked the streets, we drank at the pubs, we ate London food or English food, we traveled the English countryside and met all sorts of great people. So if you're going to start going further outside of the United States as a Gen X traveler, Europe might be your best option. If you're afraid of a language barrier and you just kind of want to get your feet wet, a lot of people in Europe already speak English. So it doesn't hurt to try to go there and just try to get your feet wet before you jump into some crazy trip. Most people don't take their trip to a foreign country that nobody speaks English and they don't know the customs right away. I'm saying most people, but not all. Now on the opposite side of the world, you have New Zealand and Australia, which are basically just like Europe. They're just on the other side of the world. New Zealand and Australia have become very, very popular, especially with Gen X travelers. If you're a big fan of the Lord of the Rings like I am, New Zealand is your place. They have places like Hobbiton and all the locations that they filmed the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit and all the different shows that are based around the Lord of the Rings that Peter Jackson worked on. New Zealand is a beautiful country, especially in the southern part of New Zealand where it's mostly national park, but you can also go to places like Wellington that are just as cool. And it's a different lifestyle, but it's also very European-esque. So if you're a little bit afraid of going there, don't be so worried about it. It's kind of like Europe, just on the other side of the world. And speaking of Australia, it's true, there are more things in Australia that want to kill you than save you. There's all sorts of crazy animals and insects and bugs and everything else there that want to get you. But the Australian landscape, the Australian people, the scenery are amazing. The streets are some of the most cleanest in the entire world. And Australia, again, is just basically a former colony of England. It still falls under the British Crown. So if you're somebody from North America, like the United States or Canada, and you want to try to experience Australia or New Zealand, those are definitely great places to go. Now, if you're a Gen X traveler and you're a little bit more bold, maybe other parts of the world are maybe more your forte. And let's look at Central America, places like Costa Rica and Panama. There's a lot of American and Canadian expats that live in these countries, and they've become kind of Americanized, but it's still a little bit different. Now, sometimes these countries can fall in a little bit of turmoil, especially with politics, so you have to be on your guard and watch your travel advisories. But don't be afraid to take a little plane trip down. For most of people in the United States, it's not that far of a flight. It's probably closer than Europe in some instances as far as a flight goes. But step out of your comfort zone, maybe go to an all-inclusive resort or a place that there's a lot of expats that are at, and you'll be fine. But don't be afraid to experience that South American or Central American lifestyle. Remember, baby steps when you're traveling as a Gen Xer, especially as a new Gen Xer that is just getting their feet wet to traveling around the world. Now, I can go on and on about places that you can travel as a Gen Xer. There are hundreds of places, thousands of places that we intend to go to on the Kling Connection and bring you along with the trip and show you how these places are. These places are really, really cool, and a lot of these locations are just something you should see before your time is up. Most of us in Gen X are in our late 40s to late 50s, maybe even early 60s. So now is the time to travel before you get too old. Now is the time to travel before you start to have health concerns. Just don't be afraid to load up that suitcase and go. Take your significant other. Travel by yourself. Don't be afraid to be a nomad. You don't always have to stay in the same place. And if I can give you one key takeaway from this entire video as a Gen X traveler, I wish I would have done it sooner. I really do. I was so petrified, and I spent so much time never going more than 100 miles from my house with my family and friends. And today, you couldn't even get me to go to some places that I used to go to anymore. We want to explore and travel, and you should take the opportunity and do that. You make friends around the world. You meet all sorts of new people, learn all sorts of new things, and heck, you might even find the next place you want to live if you get to that retirement age, or you want to work as a nomad worker or something like that. If I can help you out with this one video, Gen X, go live your life. Go travel, go explore, try the world, and follow us along for more tips and suggestions about locations that we can tell you about, and maybe will help you influence your travel decisions. Until next time, this is the Kling Connection. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.